I also found this article that Jack has a tequila finished whiskey.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it seems like it's kind of a distillery. Oh yeah, it's a distillery series release.
Yeah, they do have some different finishes available there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why they don't just put that stuff out. It's not like they have a shortage of whiskey on hand.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
And I am the second Jake.
And we're short of Dan today, but that's all right.
Jake squared. So we're going to have a really good podcast for you guys today.
Yeah. No Dan means
no
we
arguing,
get to have more fun.
Just peace and quiet and the truth.
Yeah. So today we are trying Barrell Batch 35, which is the new release from Barrell. They were nice enough to send us samples. And I believe it just started hitting shelves in like the past week, so it should be available to buy. So keep an eye out for it, and we'll give our thoughts on it in a little bit.
Yeah, Gold Eagle just got it in. If anyone's looking for it, I think we have a couple bottles left, but we should be getting some more next week. But yeah, big shout out to Barrelcraft for sending us these samples, and that had nothing to do with the Gold Eagle connection. That was all Bourbon Matters. So I guess we're moving up there and becoming pretty big time in the podcast world.
Yeah, they had sent us some Stellum samples, I think last year, of the Hunter's Moon and the other rye, or the, why can't I think of it?
Lone Cypress?
Yeah, Lone Cypress.
Okay.
I knew it had something to do with trees.
Yep, something to do with with the atmosphere, whatever.
Yeah, that was nice too. Both of those were pretty good. So yeah, I'm excited to try this one because I haven't touched it yet. But before we jump into the barrel, we got a couple news stories that we think are noteworthy. On the release side of things, Whistle Pig will be coming out with a straight wheat whiskey, which is interesting. They're obviously known for their rye, and I think up to this point have exclusively released ryes of various types.
They did come out with a bourbon about a year ago. It was like the piggyback bourbon to also go with the piggyback rye. But yeah, you don't really see, and I think they might have done like some kind of farm stock bourbon maybe in the past, but interesting that they're coming out with a wheat whiskey. I don't know. I haven't really gotten too into the wheat whiskeys, and I've tried many different ones. Mostly, I would say probably from Old Elk, because we've gotten a lot of 9-year, 10-year samples from them of wheat whiskey, and it's just a much different kind of taste than what we're used to with bourbon. And to me, it's a little off-putting, and we kind of saw that too with the I'm blanking on a Heaven Hill barrel proof wheat whiskey Bernheim when that came out. Yeah. There's a lot of hype and excitement about that, and then when people tasted it, it was quite different from what they're used to since it's not a bourbon. So yeah, we've kind of touched on that before.
Yeah, wheat whiskey in general to me is a little bit. There's not as much exciting like flavor going on, so I tend to dislike it compared to ryes and bourbons.
Yeah, typically it's just a little too dry, because you don't get that corn that, the reason why most of us love bourbon is because it has that sweetness from the corn, which is what you're lacking in wheat whiskey. I kind of compare wheat whiskey to like American single malts. I hope American single malts take off more, but I think they're kind of at the same pace right now where, the majority of bourbon drinkers haven't really gotten into them and, cared for them too much.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Yeah. So up next, we've got a new release from Jefferson's. which is humidity aged bourbon. And this is another one that we might have to do a follow up on gimmicks, because they're kind of the kings of gimmicks at this point.
What did we end up saying on Jefferson's the first time around? Did we say it? I think we said it wasn't a gimmick, but it was like very borderline.
Yeah, it was the ocean is is pretty gimmicky. But it's hard to say.
Or no, we did say it was a gimmick, right? Because
I think we settled on
we liked because I think we liked the regular reserve release just as much, if not. And that bottle was a lot cheaper, and it's basically the ocean without being taken out on the ocean.
Yeah.
But I don't know. See, this one is interesting. If Dan was here, we'd probably get into an argument right now. But I like the idea of it. When we posted it on our social media, I had a customer reach out and say this is so gimmicky. But I actually almost disagree a little bit, because I think it will be really cool to taste the same bourbon aged in different climates. If you actually collected all these tropic series or whatever, whatever they're calling the series, if you collected each one, and then to be able to sit down and taste 6 different bourbons that are all exactly the same except for the location that they aged, I think that's also, that's a very cool little tasting to do.
Yeah, and that kind of takes us back to our investment episode where we kind of talked about the value of verticals.
Yeah.
And like that's a pretty interesting vertical, and it's something that you rarely get to experience, the same exact product aged in different environments.
I don't think anyone else has done that. Yeah, as far as I know,
not that I can
not the exact same whiskey, but aged in different places. There might be different releases, but like the guy who put the barrels in the RV or whatever, drove them around, the highway bourbon.
The highway.
So there's kind of like different variations because the second release of that is going to be aged in different climates, but this is taking the exact same bourbon, no other factors, and just aging them in different climates. And I think that's cool. I think, is it a little gimmicky to buy one and drink, and will it taste better than the regular Jefferson's off the shelf? Maybe or maybe not. But I think if you do collect this whole series, that would be a very cool tasting to go through all those in one sitting.
Yeah. I think that's kind of one that's worth looking into. And would definitely, I think, be worth the effort to collect.
Yeah.
Because we actually tried this first one on Friday, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I like it better than the average Ocean release.
Yeah.
And it's a little higher proof. It's 104 proof, so it gives you a little more. But
right.
Yeah.
So then the last story, which I was trying to pull up, but then they wanted me to subscribe. So give me a second here.
Subscribe to Bourbon Matters, though, guys.
Yeah.
Don't subscribe to
nice
articles.
Nice segue. So Molson Coors beverage company, famous for Coors and Coors Light, obviously, has bought Blue Run Spirits, which is an interesting transition into the spirits segment for that brand. I think they do have a couple other spirit brands that they own, but they're not anywhere close to like a Diageo or one of those kind of conglomerates.
Yeah, and they're kind of new too. Like they just came out with that Barman bourbon within I think the last 6 months to a year. But I think I think it's a good move on their part. Obviously, spirits are kind of taking over, specifically American whiskey, compared to what it was 20 years ago. A lot of beer drinkers are getting into the spirits world and not going back as much. And I think this is kind of comparable to like MGP buying Penelope. They're buying an established brand.
Yep.
There's no point in them to try and come out with their own brand because they just haven't distilled spirits before. They'd have to pay big money to bring in, people that know how to make bourbon, how to monitor it, how to sell it. And here
Mm-hmm.
they're buying an established brand to just get themselves right in. And this is supposed to be like a very high tech, state of the art distillery that they're building at Blue Run. We talked about this on a previous episode.
Yeah. Yeah, they just, I think, started construction on this like massive distillery, designed by like a world famous architect, and yeah, it's going to be rivaling the Bardstown distillery in terms of like technological advancement and stuff. So it's definitely an interesting decision. I think Blue Run I would call almost like an ultra premium whiskey brand. I don't think they have any bottles under $80
No.
that they offer,
and they're young too and new, but
yeah.
I mean, I guess a little surprising because like Blue Run isn't as established, but with the money that they're putting into that facility, you got to believe that they're going to draw a big crowd, lots of attention, and obviously they're going to have a ton of visitors at the distillery. So I think that's more so where they're looking than an established brand per se.
Right. Yeah, probably a good move on the part of Coors to pick a brand that's, they do have a pretty solid following at Blue Run, and I'm a big fan of their rye releases that I've tried. I think way back in the day, like before episode 10, I think we tried the high rye Blue Run, and I don't think any of us were particular fans of it. However, I've tried most of the ryes that they've put out, and all of them have been fantastic. So yeah, we'll see. I think they actually work with Castle and Key too on contract distilling.
That would make sense, yeah.
But
I think so too.
I think some of their distilling is done at Bardstown as well currently. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when they start distilling their own, and what they get out of this. There's no dollar value on this buyout, but I'm sure they got a large cash infusion.
And I'm sure they're gonna let Blue Run, whoever was running Blue Run before, they're not gonna replace them. They're gonna let them keep doing their thing. It's more of like a dip into the industry because as I said before, like they don't know how to distill, and if they did want to start a distillery from scratch, that's going to cost them a heck of a lot more than buying a distillery right now, just with the people that you're going to have to bring in and the time that you're going to have to wait to, start selling the whiskey. And so good move. I think it's a good move.
Yeah. Speaking of new facilities, I think you were saying that Barrell actually is building a new facility, right?
Yeah, I believe it like just opened or it's just about to open, but they just are wrapping up a new state-of-the-art distillery. Let's see the article here. So it's about 15 miles east of where they're currently located. And it's going to bring massive upsizing, offering 5 times the blending capacity of the current place. It'll have 8 blending tanks, including 4 6,000 gallon and 4 8,000 gallon tanks, compared to the current 2 6,000 gallon tanks. So they're ramping up big time. It was originally a $3.2 million project, and now it's grown to $15 million. So they're sparing no expense, going all in on this. And on top of this, they also bought a very old rick house. Let's see. So 7th Street Road in Shively, built in 1940. I thought I read somewhere that this was like one of the oldest rickhouse is built that's still standing. I mean, it looks very old, but the rickhouse is cool because this will give them their first place to actually age whiskey and let stuff mature. Whereas before they were mostly getting barrels in, blending. So this is going to bring a whole new aspect to barrel craft. And it looks like they actually bought the rickhouse from Angel's Envy. So yeah, that's
okay.
a lot of cool things happening right now for the whole whiskey industry and especially barrel craft spirits.
So yes, let's talk about batch 35 a little bit. It's a 6-year age statement, 117.5 proof. It's distilled from Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee distilleries. And obviously Barrell is a blending house, so they acquire those barrels and blend them. This is actually, I think, one of the first ones that doesn't have something outside of Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
Oh yeah, I haven't been paying too much attention on the last couple blends or batches, but
a lot of them have like Wyoming, or like some like random.
I mean, some of them
thrown in.
Some of them have like 10 different states thrown in there. But yeah, this is so yeah, batch 35. I'm sure most of our listeners know, but Barrell obviously does a lot of different releases. The one thing that they've stayed consistent with since day one is coming out with these batch releases. And it feels like they should be a lot higher than 35, but I don't know. I guess they haven't been around for too long. But it already won a gold medal at World Whiskey Fest. I don't know, something. Tons of whiskey fests out there to win medals in these days, and but either way, it did win a gold medal. So take that for what you get from it. And I warmed up with a little bit of our Barrell 9-year MGP single barrel that we picked. So I have
nice plug.
I've been sipping on that for a little bit. And now I'm going to jump over to this new sample. And what's also interesting about the Barrell samples is most of the ones before about batch 20 were usually like 9 or 10 years age stated, and then they kind of dropped. And recently it's been 5 years as the minimum age, which we talked about it before. There's nothing wrong with a lower age statement. Sometimes that younger whiskey just brings a little more depth and other flavors that you won't get out of older whiskey.
Yep. And I think we, in our episode about blending, we talked a little bit about MGP and how the MGP reserves seem to be almost gone. I guess they don't have as much of that like ultra aged kind of stuff like they did a few years ago.
Correct.
So some of these blending houses are probably starting to look elsewhere.
Or
for some of that
find
stuff.
ways to make a little bit younger whiskey pop and help the blend. You get a lot more liveliness and fruitiness and younger whiskey. Sometimes can come with like a stringent effect, and that's kind of why most people are afraid of it. But when you're using it to blend with older whiskey, it kind of levels itself out. But let's dive into the whiskey.
Yeah. So I'm having a real hard time smelling today.
I'm getting a lot of
I'm just
deep charred oak and like maybe a little bit of cinnamon spice and baking spices.
Yeah, I was gonna say a little bit of like baking spices,
like toasted, heavy toast.
Yeah,
graham
that's
cracker.
about all I can pull out of it, unfortunately.
Not a whole lot of fruit, but I could see maybe like a blackberry being in here, something dark, but still pretty dry.
On the palate, it's a lot of the like gold standard bourbon flavors, getting like some caramel, vanilla. There's not too much oak presence.
No,
that I'm getting,
like
but
much less
it's
than
there.
what I got on the nose, much less than I would expect. And I'm getting maybe a little less spice and a little more like creamy vanilla flavors than I was
Yep.
expecting from the nose.
Yeah, it's kind of it's got like it feels kind of thick. It's the viscosity is on the thicker
it's very
end,
balanced
in my
too.
opinion. Yeah,
the flavor, it's not one of those journey pours. It's one of those, I just had a long day and I want to pour some whiskey in my glass that is going to taste really good. And that's what this is.
yeah,
There's not really a whole lot to dissect. It's just a really good bourbon. And I also think some of the more recent batches might have been lower proof. And 117, I think this drinks like it's about 110. There's not a lot of heat at all coming with this one.
Yeah, definitely drinks under its proof.
Mm-hmm.
I do get a little bit of like some kind of like fruit or something like that.
I get a little bit of orange.
There's like some lighter flavors in there.
I'm getting a little bit of orange.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like the rind, orange rind or orange zest.
Exactly, just a little zest sprinkled in there.
Yeah, it's like it really reminds me a lot of like an old fashioned if you didn't have sugar in it.
I agree. I was just gonna say this would make a phenomenal old fashioned. You probably wouldn't really need too much sweetener, maybe like a drop of maple syrup. But no, it's a really good bourbon all around. It doesn't taste young at all. It tastes well aged. So I'm sure there's some 10, maybe 11-year stuff in here as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might say actually on some of these they say.
Yeah, I mean overall, I think this is a solid one. I know every once in a while they like hit some kind of like magic, with these blends. Like I think it's batch 30 is the one that my wife like loves. And it's almost like it's like breakfast in a bottle. It tastes like waffles and maple syrup, and it's like absolutely phenomenal. And then there's that, I can't remember which batch it is, but one of them is kind of like a candy corn type thing going on. That I think we tried that at one of the master classes last year, I think it was. Yeah, this one's much more in the vein of like a classic bourbon profile.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking through the batches right now, and I'm all the way back to 25 now, and this is the highest proof that has come out in the last 10 batches. Wow. And it's also, so it's 6, 7, 8, and 13-year-old barrels. So you can definitely,
so those are pretty high.
You can definitely tell that 13 years in there, because it kind of rounds the whole thing out and gives you the oak that you're missing, but it doesn't taste like the oak is taken over.
Yeah, this doesn't taste like the knob 18.
No.
Or like something like that, that where it tastes like wood in a glass. This is really well balanced.
It is. And for those wondering,
for those age statements,
for those who follow awards, it was the San Francisco World Spirits Competition where this took a gold already. So I know some people don't care at all about that, but just throwing it out there for what it is.
Yeah.
Wow. This might be the highest proof that they've ever released on one of their batches.
Yeah, 117. I mean, it's not crazy.
No, it's not.
Is in terms of overall, but if you're gonna blend, it's kind of I would imagine it's kind of hard to get anything higher than like 120.
Yeah, especially with bourbon, if you're not blending in, like a lot of their whiskey releases have light whiskey in them, and those can get up to 130 plus proof. But with bourbon, it seems okay. So batch 10 was 122 proof. Other than that, up until now, they've all been under 117. So
interesting.
And they've kind of grown as they've went. But yeah, because I usually think of Barrell, even though they are cash strength when it comes to American whiskeys, they're usually around like 110. That's kind of what usually Barrell comes in at, unless they're not a bourbon and just a whiskey. Then they usually put in some light whiskey and they get higher.
Oh. Yeah,
but it's tasty. It's yummy. I think I like our single barrel better, but it's also $30 more than this batch. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, and then I think you guys just got in more of the Armida, right? That's gonna be retired soon.
Yeah, so they said the Armida is gonna just become like a seasonal thing. I think after it's if you really like it, you should buy some to drink. But I think they're gonna like every fall just come out with a little bit of the Armida. And we should have it in stock for at least the next couple of weeks. The distributor said they just got the last shipment of it, but they got a good amount, so it should be available. But shortly, it'll go away as just a seasonal type of release.
Yeah, I think we did. Well, we did Barrell episode 2, I think. And we tasted like 4 different ones. And Armida was one of them. And I just remember it being like very heavy in like the finishes.
Yeah.
It's several different wine.
Yeah,
and,
it's like apple brandy, Sicilian Amaro. So I think I'm a big fan of like Dovetail, Seagrass, Armida. I think there's a time and place for each of those, and those are also whiskeys where the first time I tried them, I wasn't crazy for them, and as I kept going back to them, I've liked them more and more. I think they're just excellent examples of how to really, really finish a whiskey well, where you still taste the whiskey, but obviously there's some kind of other component there, and for me, they just leave me craving a little bit more and more after each sip. And I think I would rank them Seagrass, Dovetail, and then Armida. But I think they're all very, very close. And like I said, time and place for each one. I think the fall is kind of a perfect time for the Armida because you get a little bit of like anise flavors in there, and it's not as bright as the Seagrass and Dovetail.
Yeah, Seagrass is probably my favorite of their like finished line. I mean, everybody I think at this point knows that I love rye, so that's like one of my favorite barrel products. Besides, I mean, their regular batches are always excellent. So
yeah. Good start to the day. I love recording in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sets up for a perfect day ahead.
Yeah, I got my deck's finally done.
Nice.
Got the grills out there this morning, so yeah, hopefully get to grill for the first time.
Grill and enjoy some whiskey out on that new deck. Make all that hard work. I'm making homemade pizzas today, so I made the dough this morning, and nice. Hopefully it should be a beautiful day out, hang out, and get some pizzas going on the little uni.
Nice. All right, well, I don't have anything left to say.
I don't really have anything. Yeah, I mean, there would have been more arguing and debating if Dan was here, so the episode would have probably went double the length, but I don't think it's not a bad thing to throw in a shorter episode here or there.
Yeah. Any events coming up that you want to plug?
Next week or 2 weeks from now, we have New Lou, but that's sold out. And then the week after that, we have Breckenridge Distillery, and there is still about 15 to 20 spots left for that one. But that should be a fun one, especially. I mean, if you're super into whiskey, it's a cool distillery to learn more about. They're all about blending to kind of create a smooth but flavorful whiskey. So a lot of their stuff is lower proof. If you have a buddy who's kind of just getting into whiskey, or you yourself are just dipping your toes, that's a perfect gateway into whiskey, Breckenridge. So come on to that one if you want, and you're going to be there for that one. Yeah, cool.
I'll be there for
and
Breckenridge.
then I think I don't know, are we going to do a Bourbon Matters blind this month?
I think we are.
On the, I was going to ask you about that. So we should finalize that the 23rd.
I think, we said the 23rd.
Okay. Are you still? I'm still good to go with that. If you're still good to go. Okay.
Yep.
I will. This episode will air on Monday or on Sunday, and I will probably post about this event on Monday. So if you're listening to this on Sunday, make sure you check our events on Monday and sign up for that. But that should be fun. A blind tasting sponsored by, I guess you could say, Bourbon Matters, and gonna go through some of Jake's selections and picks for the lineup. So that should be a lot of fun. Get a new perspective in there. So yeah.
Yeah, everything's going to come from my collection, and I'm going to be throwing in some curveballs and some interesting things. So I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Sweet. So goldeaglewine.com. You can go to our events page there, or download our app on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store, and sign up right on the app as well. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine, and follow us on Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. And Jake will go ahead and plug Bourbon Matters.
Yep. You can find us at Bourbon Matters on Instagram and Facebook. Watch us on YouTube and Spotify, and you can also listen on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. So we'll see you next week.
See you.
Have a good one. Cheers. Everybody.